Members, it's the appointed time and we have a quorum. In the last meeting, members agreed to invite representatives of the Hong Kong Jockey Club to attend. They will supply information and to answer questions in relation to the Betting Duty Amendment Bill 2013. A number of questions were asked, and answers were sought from the administration and the Hong Kong Jockey Club. In relation to these areas of concern and questions, please refer to CB bracket 21123/12 to 13 bracket 01. You will find the replies from the administration and the Hong Kong Jockey Club at papers number CB bracket 21123/12 to 13, 02 and 03 respectively. I've already introduced officials on the last occasion, so I'm going to dispense with the introduction. Let me welcome members, representatives who's attending for the first time. We have Mr. Henry Chan, Executive Director, Strategy Business Development of the Hong Kong Jockey Club. Mr. William Nader, Executive Director, Racing. Mr. Kim Mark, Executive Director, Corporate Affairs. Mr. Albert Chan, Executive Manager, External Relations. And Ms. Felicity Liu, Principal Financial Specialist. DS, do you take us through the paper? Or do you have anything else to add? Thank you, Chairman. The administration and the Jockey Club supplied written reply to the committee, and there is also a supplementary information from the Jockey Club. And the administration has in detail presented our proposal. Perhaps I will ask the Jockey Club to present the two papers first. Let me remind members, tabled in front of you is a paper, a reply. But this is a question asked by the clerk, a question asked by email yesterday. And you will find a supplementary paper from the Jockey Club. Who is to take us through? Mr. Mack? Thank you. In relation to questions asked by members, we have prepared a consolidated answer. And we'll give the explanation in accordance with the paper. You may refer to it. When it comes to overseas races, we have simulcast races. They cover mainly major international events, which is important for Hong Kong as an international city and a Queen capital. All the bets are handled under the pari-mutuel betting system. That means punters, after taking away the cost and government duties, they will have the payment distributed evenly. Commingled pool will result in a larger and more stable pool. That means where there are big stakes placed, the odds will not change too much. Commingled pool include overseas bets. So the pool will increase and the overall dividend payment will not change. And under the pari-mutuel betting system, say for example the odds of a particular horse increase, the odds of the other horses will drop. So there won't be major changes to the overall odds. For these simulcast races, they are attractive to tourists or expats in Hong Kong or local people. When it comes to the total receipt, it accounts for only a small percent, less than 2%, 1.8% of our total racing turnover. For various reasons, say for example language barrier or time difference. The commingled pool is a standard practice. It won't attract more local people to place bets on races, because if the punters don't know about the races or there is a language barrier, they will not place bets. The main inconsistency between the practice of Hong Kong and that of overseas jurisdiction is the betting duty regime on commingling. So for simulcast races, they are handled by a separate pool. As a result, there is a problem. For the same race, same horse, there may be different odds in different jurisdictions. And currently, bookmakers take advantage of this. It's practically risk-free when they engage in this arbitrage. And through arbitrage, bookmakers attract local punters to place bets. And once they've started placing bets with bookmakers, and if they can place bets on credit, they would usually stick to bookmakers. And as a result, there may be other problems, say for example loans and other problems. The commingling arrangement is to take away the odds difference. Participating jurisdictions will agree on the odds, so there won't be any odds difference. Bookmakers don't have the opportunity to take advantage of arbitrage, and punters will not continue to use overseas or illegal bookmakers. So betting revenue will not leak to offshore or illegal bookmakers. If there are two pools on the same race, there will be a difference. For the same race, if there is a huge difference in odds, there are many examples. Last time a question was asked about examples in the past 2 years. In the first paper, paragraph 2b, we've set out a number of examples. I'm not going to go into them, but this is just a small part of it, because there are odds difference on a lot of different horses. Say for example for King Mufasa, the odds difference can be as much as 7-fold. Say in overseas the odds are about 5, and in Hong Kong it's about 35. So there is a lot of incentive for bookmakers to take advantage of the arbitrage, to take advantage of the situation. Sometimes the odds in Hong Kong are lower, and resulting in still an odds difference. And as to how much the local turnover is affected by these bookmakers, it's difficult to tell, because they won't tell us how much they have taken from Hong Kong. But it is a huge impact. If you get on the internet, you will find all the information. and there are some betting activities on the internet. It will give you real-time information. For Hong Kong horses competing overseas races, say for example in Singapore, they have a separate pool, or they have a separate pool for bets in Hong Kong for 2009-10 and 2011-12. You see that non-local bets on Hong Kong races have seen a drop from $3.6 billion a year to $3.1 billion. This is what I was talking about. There is a leakage of bets to illegal channels. If you look at the local currency, instead of looking at the Hong Kong dollar denomination, the difference, the drop may be even higher. As the size of illegal pool increases, then they will have a greater capacity to accept greater bets. If we can eliminate the inconsistency and also with taking away the double taxation, the chance of leakage is reduced. And there's also a question about the projected turnover. We cover mainly major international races. So our target is not the revenue. It depends on whether there are Hong Kong horses and jockeys participating. They may participate in one international race and some a different one the next year. And there is also what these races are held at different time. And these factors will affect the turnover. And such factors vary from year to year, so it's difficult for us to give a projection into maybe 4 or 5 years' time. And there is also uncertainty in the global economic environment. The agreement with the government is to use the average of the turnover in the past 3 years as a reference for the next 3 years. As to the selection of races, as I said, the criteria is the importance of the races, not revenue or stake receipts. And of course, if we can attract bets placed with illegal bookmakers back to the Jockey Club, it will combat illegal activities and protect government revenue. There are also questions about the situations overseas. The trend is to adopt the standard commingled pool. Australia is one. Australia is moving towards commingled pool. Although conductors of individual provinces, because of historical reasons or many reasons, they have yet to resolve the difficulties. There's also the issue of scale.
Because a lot of pools in Australia, they are too small, and if they need to invest in commingling, they still need some time. But legislators can be aware that Australia and Singapore and New Zealand, they are working on commingling, and New South Wales Jockey Club and betting centers have indicated interest, where if Hong Kong makes the legislative amendments, they are willing to conduct commingling arrangements. In the U.S., they have already had commingled pools for over 2 decades. Another question was about royalty fees paid by Jockey Club to overseas operators, and Hong Kong is paying about $19 million a year. That's an average over the past 3 years, and it represents about 1.5% of the 1.3 billion local turnover. And these simulcast royalty fees are increasing. So in our supplementary document, we've already explained, a lot of jurisdictions have called for these royalty fees be raised to some world average of 3%. In the past, important races were not simulcast because the Jockey Club cannot afford the 3% royalty fees and other technical costs. For example, the Breeders' Cup, we weren't able to do it for 2 years. And if we have, let's say, the Singapore Derby and the Australian race, they would be affected. So these will affect those who wish to watch the races. They will be disappointed, and the government revenue will be lost because we can't afford these. So in the long run, if these important races cannot be broadcast in Hong Kong and we cannot accept bets, then those interested might invest on the internet or other illegal channels. So those familiar with overseas horses, these tend to be more familiar with international races, and these would be large, they would be placing large bets and they would be channeled overseas, and therefore the Jockey Club would be impacted as well. So in our document, we have a preliminary assessment that if the Jockey Club can sustain the 1.5% royalty fees, and if it were to increase, and if there were the increase, if that could be tax deductible, and the deductible amount would have to depend on negotiations with the overseas operators, but conservative estimate is that the 15 million would be, the 12 million would be an initial estimate, and if we were to maintain our service, it would help maintain the government revenue. Okay, let me remind colleagues, if we discuss certain items, I'll need to come to a vote, and if there is any conflict of interest, then legislators should declare their interest. And in Rules and Procedures 83A, personal financial disclosure, members cannot put forward any motions or amendments or speak upon that item unless the legislator has disclosed their interest. If you have direct or indirect financial fiduciary interest, you should declare the nature of the interest. So let me allow members to declare interest first. On the last occasion, we had made a lot of declarations. First of all, I am a nominating member, Abraham Sheck. I'm a voting member of the Jockey Club and also a director in the Macau Jockey Club. Mr. Yip Kok Kim, I'm a Jockey Club member. Mr. Ma Fong Kok, Mr. Lo Wai Kok, Jockey Club member. Do we have to declare on each occasion? You can't just wave a slip of paper. We have to declare interest. And this has occurred on this occasion. In the past, we didn't have these problems. So, normally, we don't have any time constraints, but we do have other meetings in progress. I'm aware that there are 3 meetings being held at the same time slot. So, I do not wish to embarrass you or make it difficult, but let me read out. Let's set the time limit at 5 minutes. Abraham Sheck, Lam Yip Kok Kim, Wu Ji Wai. So whoever is not here, when you return, I will give you your chance to speak. Ma Fong Kok, Lo Wai Kok. Mr. Abraham Sheck, Chairman, I have to thank the Jockey Club for providing the supplementary information. And if these were provided earlier, then we wouldn't have to waste the time to ask so many questions. So I have to criticize the government for not exercising control. They can take a complex issue and simplify it. I think the administration on this occasion, they have given rise to some doubt. We do support illegal betting. We do not support illegal betting, and having the duty at 75% to 72.5%, the government says that they agree with this, but when we have any negotiations with third parties, the government is always on the short side of the stick. So I agree with this proposal, but in 3 years' time, we should review the whole system. Have we operated at a loss? Do the Hong Kong public suffer a loss? So I would just like to raise that question. Well, the progressive tax duty is going from 72.5% to 75%. They want to scrap the progressive duty. The Inland Revenue has explained. Yes, I'm aware. They want to have it fixed. In the past, it did not exceed 72.5%. It was not amended in the past. There were a lot of constraints. Okay. But now the market has increased. So we have to look at it from a gatekeeper perspective. So I suggest a review in 3 years. But all your questions raised on the last occasion were answered. I feel the government is not diligent. They should have done their part of the job. They should have provided all the information for us. Assistant Secretary. Well, Mr. Sheck has been rather harsh with his criticism. We had consulted the panel, and when the legislation was gazetted, we had consulted the LegCo. On the last occasion, the government and its relevant bureau and department had given an explanation. Well, if legislators want to hear firsthand from the Jockey Club, The committee had invited the Jockey Club, and we do have communications with the Jockey Club. So we operate under a spirit of cooperation. Now, as to Mr. Sheikh calling for a review in 3 years, we need some time to consider that. Chairman, I am very careful with my words. The government has a responsibility to serve the Hong Kong public. They have a gatekeeper role. Now, if you don't play your role, and if you present a bill, we now have a bills committee and another panel to look into this matter. So I do have freedom of speech. You can either accept or not accept my criticism. You cannot say I'm harsh or not harsh. They are interfering with my speech. Any response? Yes, I'm also expressing my stance. Will you provide us with a written reply regarding the 3-year review? Because the paper says that it will only operate for 3 years. Yes, we can come up with a written response. It depends on the progress of the meeting. Next, we have Mr. Zhong Xugan. Thank you, Chairman. I support Mr. Abraham Sheikh because the government has not guaranteed what will happen 3 years from now. So we do need a review. And in 3 years' time, if the public has to foot the bill, then that's not appropriate. The Jockey Club is not as a not-for-profit organization. So I'd like the Jockey Club to respond. Last year, how much was turnover last year? How much was your receipts? How much taxes did you pay? How much were your administrative costs? Well, there's no point in operating too much profit, even though you do have a lotteries fund and charity fund. But is it necessary to collect so much money? Because when this law is endorsed, the government, there would be a loss to the government. If there's a loss, we need to be accountable to the public. So in 3 years' time, if there's still a loss, then we would be accountable. So prior to the 3-year period, we need a review. The legislation should say clearly that there should be a review or an extension in 3 years' time.
We have the right to ask that the government revenue is protected, that there will be an extension. Yes. I think member is also suggesting a review. You did not listen to me. You ask for a review on the policy, right? You weren't listening to me. I was. Now, Hong Kong Jockey Club, do you want to respond? I want an answer. I want an answer. Yes, I was going to deal with it. Jockey Club. Mr. Zhong asked a number of questions on tax, etc. And you've heard from members, at least 2 members who've got quite strong views, that the guarantee period is only 3 years. Members think that, yes, for the first 3 years there will be guarantee, but thereafter none. Does it mean that the government will see a great drop in revenue? I don't know if Mr. Chan has any data, any projection. Well, after the pools are commingled, what happens after 3 years? What we can do, if the administration is not going to do it, is to introduce a CSA, a committee stage amendment, and we can incorporate that. So, I don't know if you have the information the members asked for. If you don't, maybe supply them later. I think they are in the public domain. And they also asked about the pool, not the commingled pool. And another thing is, what's your view after 3 years? First, I thank you for your question. Let me explain. The changes to the pool, on average, there is For about $100 bet placed, about $80 will be used for dividend payout. For the remaining part, that is the gross profit, 72.5% of it goes to the government as betting duty. The rate is the highest in the world. Say in the UK it's 15%. In Singapore it's 25%, and that's considered high. So compared to other jurisdictions, the Hong Kong rate is on the high side. And in relation to simulcast of international races, it is one of our main services. Apart from, well, taking away duties and tax, we have to pay towards satellite services and also royalty fees. So we only have about 4%. So that's on the low side. And if you deduct royalty fees, we can just manage to shoulder other costs. Will you consider what members said? By extending the 3-year guarantee period, would you have difficulties? Members say that that the government revenue has to be protected, so there is a 3-year guarantee. You say that you are willing to try 3 years. For me, I think the government will always make the right calculations. So 3 years is about right. But do you have any internal estimate? For the 4th year, will the government suffer? Well, will the government see a drop in revenue? As I said, the turnover depends on a number of factors, and they vary from year to year. We've had a detailed discussion with the administration. We both think that the figure for the past 3 years will reflect the situation in the coming 3. Hong Kong people placing bets on non-local bets will not see major changes. It will be rather stable. So we believe that after 3 years, the government will not see a drop in revenue. Currently, the administration receives about $200 million. So, well, I don't think we will be able to go past the tax ban of $1.1 billion. What if you don't give the underwriting, say $300 million? Will the government suffer a reduction in revenue after 3 years? The agreement with the administration is that we guarantee $175 million. We believe that after 3 years, this figure will be stable. So it won't be less than 175 million. We believe that the figure will be stable. We're a partner of the government. If we provide the service, continue to provide the service, we will. This will also maintain the government revenue. I only asked for a review after 3 years, so my question wasn't answered. You said that the tax was high, but it's about profit. I asked you for the accounts. The information will be supplied to you. They may not have the figures in hand. A member expressed concern that without the guarantee, the government revenue will drop. So a review is asked. So I want to ask more questions. Without the guarantee, will the government see a drop in revenue? And that's only an estimate. Next, Mr. Cockham. There is more information supplied in the supplementary paper. So for people who are not familiar with horse races, they get more information. My point is that after the legislative amendment, will it increase the number of punters in Hong Kong? Will it heighten the gambling atmosphere? It's not just about the guarantee of government revenue in 3 years. That's a different issue. My question is paragraph E. Well, in the 3-year guarantee period, so you said that it's only 1.8% on non-local bets. So do you think there will be an increase? You said that there won't be a huge change, but it's a general remark. I do believe that there will be changes. With a commingled pool, will more people engage in gambling? You explained about the difference. Arbitrage. Odds difference between Hong Kong and overseas jurisdiction. As a result, there is an arbitrage. With your proposed change, will it increase such activities? The impression is that it will be reduced, but I don't know. So objectively, will it reduce such activities? People will not consider that, and it will reduce, and the gambling atmosphere will be dampened. Mr. Mack. The first question. Punters. After we've done our assessment, we think that the number of punters will not increase as a result of the commingling arrangement. If you are not familiar with the horses, punters will not place bets. Not simply because it is now a commingled pool. Mr. Yip is right in that because of the odds difference, as I've said, say the horse, say for example, for one of their horses, in Hong Kong the odds is only 8. Overseas is 8. Hong Kong is 4. Say the lucky 9. People may think that they can take advantage, and they want to place bets with the commingled pool and the aligned odds. This will not happen. You said to me that there won't be much changes, and now you say that there won't be any change, that it won't be affected. I think your latter answer is more accurate. Is that right? We think that the number of punters will not increase as a result of the commingling arrangement. Any follow-up, Mr. Ip? Mr. Wu Chi-wai? I'd like you to explain to me about the turnover. For 2F, you mentioned that between 2006 and 2009, about 10 race days and the figure is about 130 million. And for 2009, the number of days has increased by 5, and there is a huge hike of turnover. So what are the factors that will cause a hike in turnover? And I don't really understand. With a commingled pool, one of their views is that it will be easier for the jockey club to negotiate with overseas conductors when it comes to simulcast arrangements. Yes, they may have more certainty in their negotiation, but when it comes to non-local races, over non-local race days, there won't be any regulation, because we know that for those that are on local race days, there are regulations. But for those that are on non-local race days, there may be increase of simulcast races. And I heard from the Jockey Club that they will only provide simulcast races on international major races. Can you give me more information? How many major international races that you cannot do simulcast because you can't reach an agreement with them? Perhaps I will first ask the DS to answer. Non-local races on non-local race days, the number will not change. It is on this basis that we make the legislative proposal. So for the dozens of races, they are set by the Home Affairs Bureau. The only elbow room the Jockey Club has is, say, 78 days or 82 days. They can only select the race. They cannot increase the number of days unless they get approval from the Bureau. So they can't say, well, because of the commingled pool, we can increase the number of simulcast races. Mr. Mack?
Okay, Chairman. So under the government mechanism, our paper we can broadcast 10 non-local races during the local race days. They can only broadcast 2 races. So when we have this is different from the so you cannot calculate as a ratio. So you have not answered the question why, starting from 2009, you have an increase in turnover. Why has there been a significant increase? Have you analyzed that? In 2008-09, there were 10 non-local races, but they could be. There were 10 races that could be broadcast during the normal race days, and then there were 15 days that were not race days where they would broadcast. So just now Mr. Wu asked the difference between 10 and 15 days. These are 2 different issues. One was a horse racing day in Hong Kong where they could broadcast. The other cases were because some important races were on non-Hong Kong racing days. The racetrack was not open in Hong Kong, but there were overseas races, so you cannot compare the 2. Well, can you explain why in 2009-10, why was there a jump in turnover? Because prior to 2009-10, we didn't have these 15 simulcast days. where where it was a non-Hong Kong racing day and a overseas race was broadcast. So that's why we have an increase in turnover. And past the Melbourne Cup, you would have a race on Tuesday, not on Wednesday. Was it because of the legal restriction? You had to have a racing day in order to broadcast the Melbourne Cup. That's why you had the race on Tuesday. But now you want to race on Wednesday, and on Tuesday you will broadcast the Melbourne Cup. But even if you broadcast overseas races such as the Melbourne Cup, you won't broadcast all races. You just choose 3 or 4 races. I'm not sure, they have maybe 9 or 10 races in the Melbourne Cup, but you would only broadcast the important races. So for the other 15 days, for the other 10 days, you wouldn't broadcast the full day of races. It's exactly as you said. In the past, for example, we could, with local racing days, we could choose races to be broadcast. But the Melbourne Cup is on a Tuesday, so in the past we had to change the schedule from Wednesday to Tuesday to comply with the legislation. So that had some impact. For example, the traffic and the newspapers. So as Chairman said, we now revert back to racing on Wednesday, but the Tuesday Melbourne Cup, we will use the 15-day, one of the 15-day time slot to broadcast the Melbourne Cup. The main subject would be Melbourne Cup, but sometimes we have Hong Kong jockeys, and overseas we might play 2 or 3 races. Mr. Wu Jiwai, I just want to clarify. So prior to 2009, we could only broadcast during Hong Kong race days. It's like the Melbourne Cup, they would play 2 or 3 races. But on 2009, they had an extra 15 days. That's why there was an increase in turnover. But I want to clarify. The Jockey Club, in discussing with the Home Affairs Bureau, do they still have to get approval from LegCo to increase the number of race days? That should not be the case, but let's have a response from the Assistant Secretary. It's a licensing regime. We understand if there is an increase in racing days, there'd be concern, but do we need to come back to LegCo? No, we don't have to come back to LegCo. Did you conduct consultation on the extra 15 days? The public are aware of what's going on. You have reported to Home Affairs, the Bureau. Yes, we did conduct consultation. We had also consulted the Lotteries Fund. But you did not come back to the Home Affairs panel. Yes? Yes, we did report back to the Home Affairs panel. Well, the public concern, as Mr. Yip Kok Kim says, we're concerned that it makes it easier to broadcast overseas races, and when we give them the green light, and if we don't handle the number of racing days, this could be an area of public concern. So first of all, the Jockey Club needs to handle the tax revenue question, and they also need to pledge they won't increase the number of racing days to maintain the status quo, and you'll want to target the arbitrage. And well, the government is regulating this. Also, perhaps the administration needs to come up with some pledges. Just now I responded to the question. we already have a fixed number of simulcast days and racing days. We do not intend to increase the racing days or simulcast days. So if the Jockey Club wants to increase the number of racing days, what's the procedure? For example, in 0910, I can explain again. There will be public consultation. We'll have to consult the lottery fund. And then we also have to consult the Home Affairs panel. So we have to do full consultation. I think colleagues are interested. I don't think you were in this post. At the time, could you provide us with a written explanation what was done to increase these 15 simulcast days? Well, Mr. Mack, in the coming future, will you have any application for extra simulcast days? Chairman, as I said, we wish to provide an important service. We are not driven by profit, so the situation has not changed. Mr. Ma Feng Gok, I'd like to mention that when the issue of commingling was raised in the panel, I think the explanation was very brief. When the bill appeared in the Bills Committee, it was much more, the explanation was much more detailed. So it gives people the impression that they started with a simple background and the matter got more and more complex. So I think the government needs to review its practice. And I'm concerned that starting from the principles, the Home Affairs Bureau regulates the Jockey Club, and we are concerned whether the betting will increase, and we're also concerned about revenue, government revenue. So Mr. Mack had explained that the JC and the government are partners. Well, that's problematic. I don't think it's a partnership. It should be more of a regulatory relationship. The legislative amendment gives rise to concerns of government revenue. Will the government receive less tax revenue? The second concern is because of the operating difficulties, the government needs to provide the JC with some incentives. I don't follow this. Why should the government subsidize the Jockey Club to enhance its operations? Is that the role the government should play? So my first question for JC is the broadcast fee increase. How is it levied in the first place? Is it a percentage of bets or a fixed sum? And who collects these fees? Is it the operators, the jockey clubs overseas, or is it satellite companies providing this broadcast service? And what are the reasons for the increase? If the operator of the race charges this, well, the Jockey Club is also an operator. They should also levy a fee. So both sides will increase the fee. So the second question for the government is, why does the government feel it needs to alleviate this operating difficulty on the JC's part? And I also see that the Jockey Club paper says the stake receipts have been increasing. So if the legislation allows better cooperation with overseas operators, then theoretically your stake receipts should increase, and why would your operations be more and more difficult? Assistant Secretary, why do you need to subsidize the JC? Mr. Ma is correct. The government is a regulator. We are the licensing agent. So when we put forward this bill, it has to consider public interest. So the committee had invited JC to give a detailed response. Now, regarding broadcast fees, the commingled pool will target illegal betting and arbitrage. So the JC had proposed the commingled pool. We need to consider how it will benefit them, and they mentioned that broadcasting fees would increase and it would make it financially difficult for them. Well, Mr. Mack had explained he has some concrete examples. If there are high broadcast fees, that they can't, it's not feasible for the Hong Kong JC. So the government is allowing the JC some financial alleviation. So in the whole financial arrangement, why do we have to introduce the pledge? So perhaps the inland revenue can respond. So inland revenue, who can respond to this? And then we'll have Mr. Mack respond. Ms. Chair, we had over the last 3 years, how did we calculate these this pledge money? Well, the government, in the long run, has no intention to increase government revenue. Well, the pledge, it's because there has been a change in the system, and we don't want the government revenue to decrease because of this change in the regime. We're not trying to enhance the government revenue. Why do we have a 3-year period? The paper refers to the change in betting duty in 2006. There was also a 3-year time frame.
This time, 3-year is adopted based on previous experience. Mr. Mack. Just now, Mr. Ma asked a question about the royalty fees. It's calculated on a percentage of the stake receipts. Is charged by the conductor of the overseas rates. Of course, that the conductor may be different in different places. It may be a group of people, not necessarily a jockey club. When I said a shared goal, I meant combating illegal gambling activities. Of course, the government regulates us. If we can help to stabilize government revenue, of course, the Jockey Club is willing to do that. In relation to the two-way thing, betting duty in Hong Kong, as I said, is a lot higher than overseas jurisdictions. Well, does it mean that it will be easier for us to negotiate with overseas jurisdictions? Well, with the high betting duty, they just have their own pool instead of having a commingled pool to avoid people taking advantage of the arbitrage. That was how we negotiated with them. With the high betting duty in Hong Kong, we have little elbow room to charge more. I think the question was, with a commingled pool, does it mean that you can increase the number of simulcast races, say for example the Breeders' Cup? Is it related? With a commingled pool, and the other party charges a higher fee, say currently is about 4%. If they charge 3%, then we simply can't do it. If there is a relief, we may be able to keep the service. I don't really understand. Can you tell me? Without a commingled pool, you can't simulcast Breeders' Cup. Why would you think that with commingled pool you may be able to broadcast Breeders' Cup? Did I hear you right? What's the relationship? Mr. Ma said that by your answer, it's not just because of arbitrage, bookmaking. That would affect your ability to broadcast overseas races. Can you give me a clearer answer? Breeders' Cup is one of the example, and so is the SIA Cup and the Australian race. If in our next round of negotiation the fee is over 1.5%, we may not be able to provide the service. With the legislative amendment, it helps us to maintain the service. Why? Because there will be 1.5% relief. Say if there is an increase of fees to 3%, we have to pay 3%. We will not be able to shoulder that. Well, I think there is a misunderstanding. The members think that you are suffering a loss, but that is not the case. You are making calculations on the unit cost of each race. If it's a loss, you will not do it. If it's not a loss, you will go ahead. Is that what you meant? It's not the case that the government is helping you to make more profit. It's talking about individual races. Mr. Ma. I find it puzzling. You have shifted the increase in fees to the government. The government absorbs the increase of fees. But this is a commercial decision. If people think that it is a profitable race, so the fees is increased to 5 to 6%, does the government have to shoulder that as well? Why do our government have to give you the relief? What's the logic? Who is to take this question? I'll defer to Mr. Chan. Thank you. Well, we provide services to local punters on overseas races so that they can place bets in Hong Kong instead of to illegal bookmakers. The party who benefits most is the government by way of revenue. If we have to pay 3%, we will not be able to reach an agreement with overseas conductors. That is the case for breeders. Singapore asks for quite a high royalty fees as well. If the Jockey Club can't provide such service, then we will not be able to provide the standard of service, and as a result, there will be bets leaked. Government will not get any revenue from it because we don't broadcast these races. There is also an indirect impact. Hong Kong races are broadcast overseas. We'd also like to have these bets in the same pool in Hong Kong. So we would like to have overseas bet commingled, put into a commingled pool in Hong Kong. And the legislative proposal will not give us a double taxation. We export local races, but in the international practice, if we do not broadcast overseas races, they will not want to broadcast Hong Kong races. So we export Hong Kong races. The benefit reaped by the Hong Kong Jockey Club will translate into profits tax to the Hong Kong government. So there are many factors in play here. Mr. Ma Fung Kwok, speaking for the second round. You will speak in the second round. Now, Mr. Lo Wai Kwok. From 2B of Jockey Club information, I see that there are some. I see the odds difference. Say 2011 and 12. There are two horses. You see that overseas odds are higher. On the 9th of December 2012 for the Longines Cup, in relation to Red Cadeau, in the Alcopop, you see that there is also an odds difference there, 20 to 3.6. I see that there is an incentive. Well, the punters in Hong Kong will see that the odds are much more favorable to place the bet in Australia, say for Ambitious Dragon. You may not be able to combat illegal bookmaking or offshore bookmaking completely, but at least there is a positive impact by attracting bets back into the Jockey Club pool. Much was said about the benefits from Hong Kong's perspective, but when it comes to overseas conductors, is there a strong incentive for them to do it? So I think that's down to the effectiveness of the proposal. Say for the Dubai World Cup Day, March 2013. You see, for these two horses, there are odds difference. But you see, for the overseas jurisdictions, the odds are different too. Say for Animal Kingdom, the South Africa and Singapore have different odds. So Red Cadeau. So there is no commingled pool over there as well, because with a commingled pool, then there will be the same. Well, I think you've just cited a very special example. Dubai only conduct the races. They don't accept bets. So there are some bookmakers, legal bookmakers, some illegal bookmakers. They will set their own odds. There is no commingled pool, so Dubai is a very special place. But that is an example nonetheless. There may be many factors at play, whether there will be a commingled pool. Chairman, I think you're the most familiar person among all the legislators of this term. Thank you. You're saying that I am a heavy gambler. I fully understand the explanation of the Jockey Club, but I think it may be their own wishful thinking. Whether it will achieve your goal depends on whether the other party is willing to do so. For 2G, they say that for Australia, they are moving towards a commingled pool, but not all operators are ready. So will there be some operators who are unwilling to do so? And the odds difference may give them more elbow room. I would like to get more information. Another. Well, you mentioned a lot of things about a guarantee period of 3 years. After 3 years, a review is appropriate. Members who made the suggestion mentioned the provision. Reminds me of a sunset clause. But it seems that sunset clause is not feasible, because when it comes to a commingled pool, the other party may think, well, you have a sunset clause. But at least we should get an undertaking from the administration that there will be a review after 3 years' time. Mr. Low, they're not talking about sunset after 3 years. We're talking about a guarantee period. That is, over the 3 years, 175 million each year will be given. If there is no guarantee, there is a drop in revenue. Sorry, I didn't hear that clearly. So members are asking for a review, not to let the Jockey Club off, because after the 3 years, if there is a review, the period may be extended. If the amount received is at $175 million, of course, if it's much higher, then there is no need for a review. Sorry, I didn't really understand what they were talking about when it comes to a review. An overall review or just on some part? Now I'm clear. Mr. Low, I've used some of your time, but you have asked a number of questions. Can you leave some of your questions to the second round? Mr. Chen raised his hand. A question was asked. Well, why would overseas operators be willing to do it with you?
The idea of commingled pool is nothing new. In fact, in the U.S., in the different states within the U.S., it has been in operation for more than 10 years. For the global races and the Asian races in the last 5 years, there has been discussion on developing horse racing and dealing with unintended consequences. So the arbitrage leads to illegal betting, and it also affects the legal operators. So the global trend now within the racing industry is commingling, pool. The end result is win-win for everybody, because the odds might be in your favor today, but the odds might be against your favor, against you the next day. So commingling is now the global trend. But it is due to tax and technical reasons, legal reasons, that it's not being taken on a larger scale. Singapore, Australia, they are now forming big pools. So for all participating operators, it's advantageous. When these commingled pools are formed, then everybody else will have to follow suit. Because if your pool is small and if there's a larger pool in existence, the bettors would automatically bet on the larger pool. So all the smaller pools will have to converge. Follow up? If that's the case, it does not say that how much the betting pool is for each of these races, and after commingling, what will be the impact on the betting odds? Will it converge towards the international pool odds, or the Hong Kong odds? Will it not vary too much? Basically, the commingling pool allows uniform pool, stable odds, and of course each horse would attract different odds. It depends on the bettors' views on the race. So each place would have different views, but when it's uniform, wherever you're betting, you'll see the same odds. Mr. Liu Changguang. Thank you, Chair. I thought I was familiar with the subject, but now I'm starting to get confused. So I want to clarify 2 points. Just now, why should the government assist the JC's operations? Well, I want to clarify. I recall in the past we had an independent pool because there was a double duty, double taxation. But then the government said they would accept taxing at the origin. So in the past we had this independent pool. But because the government relaxed the double taxation, now you can consider commingling pool. Now you can negotiate with overseas operators on the commingling pool. Are you referring to this operation, or are there other considerations? The second question about broadcast fees. Just now you said Breeders' Cup will now, so they want to levy 3% of turnover. It will incur a loss. So I want to clarify. So different overseas operators, do they ask for different broadcast fees, or is there a standard price? Or let's say, for example, Singapore would have a different percentage, Australia would have a different percentage, in the US another percentage. Do you have to negotiate individually, or is there international practice where they would charge between 2 and 3%? I'm aware. Is this the outcome of commercial negotiations? That is, let's say you want 6% and they will end negotiation. But if will they bargain it down to 3%, 2.5%, and ultimately it just comes down to a cost and equation. We now have a cap of 1.5%. It allows you more room to undertake this broadcasting, but does it come down to a business decision? Even though it's an unreasonable request, but you have the business operations that can absorb that. So if, even though I can sustain this, but if you can still turn down these broadcast offers if it's unreasonable. The first part regarding inbound commingling, that is Hong Kong races but their bettors are overseas, and Mr. Liu is correct. In the past, Hong Kong tax laws would tax them twice. So the overseas jurisdiction, they would say they would like to bet or broadcast Hong Kong races, but they would have their own pool overseas. So that was the negotiation obstacle. The second question was the broadcast fees. These are outbound pools. That is, it's an overseas race, but bets placed in Hong Kong. But there are now two obstacles. Under the current tax regulations, it's not clear how it should proceed, and Hong Kong tax rates are high, so we already explained in detail, and I don't want to repeat. So we have the broadcast fee obstacle. In general, we negotiate individually with overseas races, but because there is a world global trend, as we explained just now, the old contracts charge a lower rate, and if we cannot afford when we negotiate individually, if we cannot afford these broadcast fees, we're concerned that there might be illegal betting or arbitrage that would affect government revenue. But as I said, the Breeders' Cup, we can turn down that negotiation because it's there. But when negotiations break down for all cases, then those people familiar with overseas races, there would be more incentive for them to bet with illegal bookmakers. Any follow-up on this question? So it's not just a commercial decision, you're also considering public interest. Second round, Mr. Ma Fung Gok. Just now, Mr. Chan said we're trying to clamp down on illegal betting. So my understanding is that this amendment, the most convincing argument is that you can stop arbitrage and illegal betting. I totally support that. But for other bookmakers or illegal activities, I don't see what you can do. We have now sports pools, different kinds of pools. It's occurring all the time. Some of it is horse racing and some of it is not horse racing. So you can't stop these activities. That's not our task. That's the first point. So using this as a reason, it doesn't quite convince me. The government has always been trying to stop illegal gambling. So the second question is on broadcast fees. In your explanation, you said it was an outbound, inbound commingling pool. But if you look at it from a trade perspective, the import and export have to be balanced. You want to negotiate the broadcast of local and overseas races, so it should be an equal negotiation. You shouldn't incur any extra expenses unless you're charging an exorbitant rate. So broadcast fee being a obstacle and you're asking for government subsidy, that cannot be substantiated unless you're saying that we don't export our races and we have to import a lot of races. Well, then why do we have to import so many of these overseas races? Just now you said it's to satisfy our need. Well, I think with that, there's a lot of room to negotiate there. Is that our first priority? So I'd like the JC to respond to these comments. I think they had responded. You just I already stated my understanding. I know, but you can have them respond once again. Mr. Chan. First of all, I agree. Illegal activities cannot be curbed 100%. But to a certain extent, we see if we can minimize arbitraging activities, then in fact it does target the attractiveness of illegal betting. Regarding broadcast fees of races, when we broadcast overseas races, we want to serve the Hong Kong public. They can watch these international races. It's like major sports events. If there's a public need to bet on these races, we would like them to do so legally. Third, when we negotiate broadcast fees, our taxes are high, so all we can offer is a 1.5% broadcast fee. In the global market, especially for big events, Melbourne Cup, Breeders' Cup, races in Dubai, their stakes are getting higher and higher. So their broadcasting fees are going up. Hong Kong is paying the lowest broadcast rates, and they feel that it's unreasonable. So if they increase broadcast fees, and if the JC doesn't have a tax relief, we won't be able to broadcast these because we can't afford it. If we can't broadcast these races, we can't provide the service. Hong Kong punters interested in these races, they won't have a legal outlet to bet, so they will be forced to bet illegally. So that will affect government revenue and society.
About Hong Kong races exported, well, we have to broadcast overseas races so that it will be a reciprocity. So apart from government revenue, this also is very important to Hong Kong's international status. If overseas countries are not interested in Hong Kong races, then we can't say that we have a place in the world when it comes. Well, we'll have a place in the world. So for overseas operators, this will be satisfactory, and we can charge royalty fees. And if we're paying 1.5, we can't charge 3% from others. And if the royalty fees charge is increased, we will ask to increase the fees we charge them. And this is not reciprocity, not complete reciprocity. No. Well, it doesn't matter. If you're paying 3%, you can charge 3%. You ask for 1.5% from the government for the 3% you pay out. Will you give back 1.5% from the 3% you receive? This is a commercial behavior. Well, this is not the main objective of the proposal. It doesn't necessarily mean that the government is subsidizing it. If you charge lower rates, overseas bets will come to Hong Kong. There will be more bets coming into Hong Kong, and in turn it will increase revenue. You don't accept that? You're the chairman. You don't have to explain to me. I'm not helping them. But if you ask them to explain, they will have to explain many times. It seems that you don't understand. So I am supplementing. I'm not from the administration. I'm not from the Jockey Club, and I'm just helping. If you don't like it, I can just not talk at all. Any follow-up? No? Mr. Christopher Chung. Mr. Chan said with the legislative amendments, then you will have more equal footing with overseas operators and better in the negotiation. Well, there will be a 3-year guarantee period. How many more simulcast races will there be? And how much, what will be the increase of the operating revenue of the Jockey Club? If they want to increase the number of simulcast races, they need approval from the Bureau, but they will have a plan. They base their calculations on the 15 days. Of course, there will be benefits for them. If you're talking about business plan, of course there will be benefits in the end. Otherwise, they will not be bothered to introduce changes, save them from having to answer questions from us. Of course, they will look at the benefits, apart from the tax and the negotiation. What about profit? Of course, that they will have plans to increase the number of races. Whether they will get the approval is a different matter. There will be increase in their turnover. How much will the increase be? Well, they say that, punters in Hong Kong will be more interested in placing bets locally, and they will not go to bookmakers, illegal bookmakers. 3 points. First, more cooperation with overseas race operators. We're talking about the aligned odds, not more or less races. And in relation to the changes of bets, as we've said in the paper, overseas separate pools on local races has dropped from $3.6 billion a year in 2009-10 to $3.1 billion in 2011-12. With the aligned odds, then the incentive to take advantage of the difference in odds will be decreased. This in turn will help in combating illegal gambling activities. You will have an estimate. If you give a guarantee, there will be an estimate on the commingled pool. How much will the turnover be? there will be an estimate. When I was talking about non-local bets on Hong Kong races, this is inbound. Nothing to do with the guarantee. Guarantee means Hong Kong punters placing bets on overseas races. We think the turnover will be stable. I'm not happy with the answer, so I insist that after 3 years there should be a review. Just now they were quite confident, saying that there will be a guarantee, that it will increase the appeal to local punters. They will not turn to illegal bookmakers. And as I've said, that wherever there is benefit, punters will go wherever they are. Of course, with the smooth cooperation, you will up your promotion on simulcast races. And the Bureau will have the responsibility to monitor gambling atmosphere. As you said, that the pool will be large, the odds will be better, or the dividend payment will be better. I want an interim report. They say that they will see whether there will be a review and they will come back to us. Mr. Lo Wai Kwok, who's not here. Mr. Abraham Sheikh, speaking for the second time. This is complicated and we're talking about things in the future. I think the information is quite clear from the Jockey Club paper, but can I ask the Jockey Club, well, overseas pools, are they necessarily bigger than the local pool? Can you give me an information paper? Can you give me information on overseas pools, the size of a Hong Kong pool, excluding illegal bookmakers, offshore bookmakers? I think in this way you will answer a lot of questions. And from the Jockey Club's perspective, how will you develop this new market? How will you benefit from it? And what about the international trend? If you look at the well, you can get information on overseas races on the internet. People in Beijing can get the information on odds in Vancouver. This is a new way that you can take. Can you give us more information? I think you have explained it, but there are still some unanswered questions. This is rather complicated, especially for people who don't bet. You may be overseas and you telephone and back to Hong Kong to place bets. Well, I place bets on the Melbourne Cup. Well, if you win, then it's an investment. Give us the information about the difference in the size of the pool, and I think this will help us to better understand it. Let's see what Mr. Max says. For major international races, of course, the pool will be bigger than that in Hong Kong. In the UK, not necessarily the case. They have legal bookmakers, as you know. Their money may not be calculated into the main pool, and there are also some, of course, legal bookmakers. I don't know if you have the information. If you have now, please say so. If you don't, give us an information paper. Do you have any information about, say, the Melbourne Cup, the size of beds, the pool, and what about ours? Sorry. There are some legal bookies. We have to have a comparison of the same thing, apples to apples. We need to look at the pool. The pool of our jockey club with their jockey club. And if you include their bookies, then it will be even bigger. You can't cut illegal activities. You can't eliminate it because they are quite hidden. But you need to compare the same things. Mr. Mack. Thank you. Just now, what the chairman said was right, and we thank Mr. Sheck for his views. We will supply the information. We mainly select major overseas races, say Melbourne Cup. On that very day, the pool is bigger than our pool on Melbourne Cup. We're talking about major international races that are well known. And that's why they have the condition to have the commingled pool. For Hong Kong races and non-local bets, if they have a separate pool overseas, of course, the size will be smaller than the Hong Kong pool. But they see that But for the overseas jurisdictions, they see that we will both win. That's why they are willing to have the commingled pool. Our time's running out. Mr. Ma Fong Kwok, I want to make a request. I wonder if the Jockey Club can give us some information, say in the past 2-3 years for this kind of races, whether it's export or import. The percentage of the pool, the dividend payment, etc. Now, we don't have export. We can only talk about our own separate pool because that is separated, but there is no commingled pool. Now, I was talking about our international races and simulcast races on international races, but there is no import or export. They can only tell you about their own separate pool. They may not know about other separate pools. And what about dividend? Dividend is something different. You're talking about dividends of overseas races, or the prize of overseas races to the winning horse, and the price of local races to the winning horse. Our time's running out. If you have any other questions, if you can give the questions in written form, give them to the clerk, who will then forward them to the Jockey Club. The next meeting is the 27th of May, 4:30. I see that there are 3 days, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 11th of June. I don't want the one on Wednesday because it may clash with ESC or PWSC. Could you please pen the 3rd of June, which is quarter to 10:45 to 12:45, but it clashes with 2 other meetings.
On the 11th of June, we have Abraham Sheck and Gakit not able to attend. So if you don't mind, let's set these 2 dates. We hope that we don't use these dates, but it's 3rd of June and 11th of June. Next meeting will be 27th of May, 4:30. Okay? No AOB, so we conclude here. Thank you.